Interest rates must come down. You heard it here first. Your old buddy Josh is going to call it again. So the question is, how do you benefit from this? And we'll do that later. But they're going to come down. I was just reading an article by Peter Schiff. And I'm not a huge fan of Peter Schiff, but I like what he writes. I like Martin Armstrong. I like what I say. I'm not a huge fan. I don't agree with everything they say, but they have a right to their opinion. I find it interesting what they talk about, because I agree with a lot of it, actually. Anyway, just got back from Virginia. If you're wondering where your old buddy Josh was for the last couple of days, I drove up to Harrisonburg, Virginia to see my mum, as we say in the UK, our mums, and you got to love your moms. My mom's is great, crazy but great, and it was fun. Then went to James Madison, checked out that school with my two boys. We were greeted with the people who are doing the tours with their pronouns. The first one was a they, them, which we all know is, I'm not saying anymore, and everyone else was a she, her. They all had to say their pronouns. It's kind of like, how do you know someone's vegan? They're going to tell you. How do you know someone's gay? They're going to tell you. Literally, the first thing it says, my name's Madeline. I'm a vegan. You know what I'm saying? You're like, okay, Doris. Anyway, it's so freaking... So there's one girl who didn't say her pronouns. And so we went with her because obviously she's more based in reality. It turns out I think she just forgot, to be honest with you. She had some kind of... I think she just got almost... intimidated, not by the pronoun people, but by having to do these campus tours. I don't want to... She was nice, very soft-spoken, though, and definitely wasn't outgoing, loud and proud and outgoing. I just think she forgot to do her pronouns, but we chose her because reality is a good place to be. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, then we went to Virginia Tech, and dude, if you haven't been from that corridor of Virginia, you don't know what you're missing. It's insanely gorgeous. I love it there. Definitely gonna retire there. I love Georgia, but nothing beats Virginia, man. And I'm a Maine boy, and Maine's freaking beautiful on the coast, just too doggone cold. Virginia is a perfect temperature. It's about 5 to 10 degrees lower than it is here in North Georgia, and then you're talking Macon, Georgia, which is about 5 to 10 degrees hotter than it is here in South Georgia, Valdosta. Woo, too hot for your old buddy Josh, his Maine boy. Anyway, and my wife is from Virginia, so we'll be there 100%. And then, anyway, well, good time. A lot of apocalyptic driving yesterday on the roads, by the way. Just be careful out there, my friends. Be careful, because there's some nuts. Of course, I'm the best driver there ever was, and you want to just follow me, I'll get you there. All right, so I'm reading Peter Schiff. Dude, you're in a roundabout. You didn't even look to see the right. And Peter Schiff says, jeez. The federal government, the debt service payment on the federal government's debt is now, I think he said $620 billion the trailing 12 months. So the last 12 months, the federal government has paid $620 billion in debt service, which is up almost 3 times from what it was 18 months ago when they started raising in January of 2022. All right. Just remember that. The interest on the federal debt is almost 3 times what it was just 18 months ago. We're approaching $700 billion a year. One of the biggest line items in our budget. All right, and we don't have a budget. We have a budget. We don't have the money as it is because we're running perpetual deficits, which just add to the debt. On top of that, now we have short-term debt, which is at 5 1/4, 5 1/2, something like that. So all these bonds that are running off, maturing, where we weren't paying any interest on it, basically, are now we're going to redo at 5% interest rates. I think he said 20% of all federal debt is short-term now. It's going to be coming to mature in like a year or something like that. All right, dude, this is not sustainable. I mean, literally, none of this is sustainable. But this right here, it cannot continue. All right, then on top of that, you see the long-term debt, 10-year treasury is still like 3.7. All right, so what Peter is saying, like, who's going to buy the long-term debt if you can get the short-term debt at 5 and 5 1/2, something like that? Who's going to buy the long-term debt? Well, nobody. So what does that do to the long-term debt? It drops the price of the bonds way down, and what does that do to the yields? It makes them go way up, all right? So the price goes down because there's no demand. The federal government's getting out of quantitative easing, so they're reducing their monetary supply. All right, so now you got the price of the bonds dropping like a brick in water because no one wants the long-term debt when they can get short-term debt. It pays a whole lot more without locking up the money. And the federal government isn't buying, and I think he said some foreign countries aren't buying as much anymore. So the demand for the long-term bonds are dropping like a brick in water. When demand falls, price falls. When price falls on bond yields go up. I know it's a little quick, brief tutorial, but just remember that. Demand drives price, price drives yields. It's just that simple. So demand drops, Price drops and yields go up. All right, so now we have 5 1/4. We'll just say 5% on the short end, and then the long term is at 3.5, 3.7, 4 on the 30-year. Now, when the demand for those long-term bonds drops, that means the price drops, which means the yields go way high. We're talking 4 or 5. We're talking 6, 7% on the long term. All right, yeah. How's that going to happen? It's not, because the federal government can't afford the short-term interest rate as it is. They can't. So they're going to have to reduce interest rates. It's inevitable. And we have an example of this called Japan. Japan is 250, 260% debt to GDP. It's been like that for 3 years now, 4 years, something like that. It's been over 200% for a long time, since like 2014. What is their 10-year rate? 0. They pay no interest. They're basically saying, buy our debt, we won't pay you interest. Well, who's buying their debt? Well, they are. They're their own country is buying their own debt. No one else is going to buy Japanese debt. So they're basically financing their operations interest-free. It's like a 0% financing. It's still debt. They still got to pay it back, but they're paying back interest. They're not paying back any interest. They're paying back principal to themselves. The same thing's going to happen here. You're like, dude, we can't afford $1 trillion debt service payment. We can't. So we're just going to lower rates. Once we beat inflation, of course, you beat inflation not by raising interest rates or reducing monetary supply, M2. You beat inflation by reducing the cost of energy. I just don't get why people can't get this. It's crazy to me. It's crazy. Price of energy goes down, the inflation goes down. Holy crap, this is exactly what's happening, dude. It's nuts, which is why they'll never get off fossil fuels, by the way. Anyway, so you're reducing interest rates to basically I'm not saying they go all the way down to 0, but they're going to reduce interest rates to alleviate the huge destruction of the economy when one of the biggest, if not soon to be the biggest line item in our federal budget is interest on the debt. They don't have the money to pay this. But Josh, they're paying it to themselves. Yeah, they are paying it to themselves and Social Security Administration and whatnot. And guess what? They can also pay themselves. Nothing. Because they're their biggest source of their own borrowing is ourselves, the federal government, the U.S. government. So they can say, we're just going to give you interest-free loans, 0% financing to fund your operations, just like Japan's doing. China's going to do the same damn thing. It's inevitable. The interest rates are going to fall. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. No one's ever been. We don't know what the hell is going to happen. But the level of interest on the debt is unsustainable when we're adding to the debt. And not are we adding to the debt, the old debt that we had accumulated from the previous quantitative easings over the last 15 years is now maturing, and they're going to be called out as significantly higher interest rates, which is going to add to the debt, which is going to add to the financing of the debt. Dropping it is... So let's just put it this way. Let's just say they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep our interest high. Where does the money come to service the debt? Where does it come from? It's not there as it is. There is no money to service the debt as it is. So how do you get the money to service the debt? Oh, you take on more debt. And what does that do? It costs more money to service the debt. I mean, it's going to collapse, dude. The whole thing, all these things collapse. Now, again, will it collapse a la 1920s Germany? No, it won't. There's still a Rome. There's still a Greece. There's still the Turks, the Ottomans. The Roman Empire, we know how they did with the currency. They start shaving off whatever it was, copper, I can't remember what it was, iron, whatever it was on the currency. That's literally what we're doing now with the dollars. We're basically doing the same damn thing. But that does devalue the currency. Without question, that devalues it. No one's going to deny that. And it can't keep going on forever, but certainly can go on for hundreds of years. We don't know. We've never been there. All I know is that ultimately it will collapse. But it won't collapse like in one sudden, boom, we're all dead. It'll just collapse gradually like what happened in Rome over the course of decades, if not centuries. Anyway, so, and that, again, in the long run, we're all dead. So in the long run, we'll have to, will it be our grandkids? Well, I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know. All I know is for us, as we sit here today, all we can do is contend with our issues at hand. And that's why I'm looking at long-term bonds. Long-term bonds seem very attractive to me, long-term government bonds, because if I'm right and the interest rates drop, at some point, you're going to get rewarded bigly. And on top of that, you're still getting rewarded while you're hanging tight by owning the debt, because you're still getting interest on those debts. Right. Love your thoughts. I like these videos. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list. And, of course, you can always buy me a cup of coffee. It's in the doobie-doo. See ya.